So what does Donald Trump really want from this country? Let's bring in Alex Panetta in Washington, Catherine Cullen in Ottawa to break this all down. But we need to start with some news. At a confirmation hearing in Washington for Trump's pick for Commerce Department, Howard Lutnick spoke about what the White House wants from Canada. Let's listen.
Shut your border and end fentanyl coming into this country. So it is not a tariff per se. It is an action of domestic policy. Shut your border and stop allowing fentanyl into our country, killing our people. So this is a separate tariff to create action from Mexico and action from Canada. And as far as I know, they are acting swiftly. And if they execute it, there will be no tariff. And if they don't, then there will be.
Alex, he makes it sound so simple, right? Is that really it? Just stop the flow of fentanyl and this goes away?
Well, that's the good news. Maybe Canada shows some actions at the border. Maybe you make a video showing a drug bust near Cornwall. You let Trump play the video on social media. He declares a big win. He's protecting America, and everyone lives happily ever after. No tariffs on February 1st, and North American free trade continues as we've known it for 30-plus years. By the way, we're hearing this is actually what Canada's trying to do. The government is literally cobbling together video footage from the border, sending it to Trump. Apparently, Danielle Smith in Alberta as well has invited a Fox News crew down. Maybe it'll be enough to buy us some peace for a while. And I say for a while, because here's the bad news. Lutnick is threatening more tariffs as early as April 1st. I'd make a joke about the weather. The forecast calls for threats today and more threats in the spring. So we know that on his first day in office, Trump signed an executive order demanding a sweeping study on trade practices around the world. Study is due April 1st, and it's obvious he's going to use this study as a pretext for tariffs. And that's exactly what Lutnick warned about today. He mentioned a couple of gripes with Canada. Dairy, he wants to sell more to Canada. Autos, he wants fewer cars from Canada and Mexico. So what he said today is it's going to take a couple of months to work out the broad tariff policy, the macro issues. But first, the micro issue, the border.
Catherine, I know you're working the phones today on what Lutnick said. What are you hearing about how what he said changes the equation?
Interestingly, Adrienne, people are telling me that this doesn't really change that much, that in their opinion, we've already been in a multi-front tariff battle with the United States, and today's message is really similar to what some Canadian officials heard in November at the Mar-a-Lago meeting with Trump. Canadian officials have planned for a broad range of scenarios, and this is yet another possibility of what could play out in an already long list. But I would suggest, Adrienne, that you can't really view what happened today entirely as nothing has changed, but because since Donald Trump first floated the idea of linking tariffs to the border, the Canadian government has leaned in hard, committing $1.3 billion to helicopters, drones, and more. And Lutnick himself, he's had one-on-one meetings with Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc, spent a significant amount of time with the Prime Minister just this week, and Canadian officials still don't know if it's enough. Now, Lutnick did say if he believes that Canada is acting quickly enough, if it executes, as we heard there, that it could be spared those tariffs. But of course, we wouldn't be out of the woods because there's this whole other basket of tariffs related to trade. And we know that Trump sounds pretty convinced that enacting tariffs will make the U.S. government rich, even if it's clear it's going to cost Americans.
So there's so much hyperbole around the subject, particularly around fentanyl. A good moment to look at some stats when it comes to fentanyl. According to the Americans, right, these are the U.S. Customs and Border Protection's own numbers. Between October 2023 and September 2024, more than 9,500 kilograms of fentanyl were seized at the U.S.-Mexico border. And again, compare that, and you've heard this before, right, to the nearly 20 kilograms seized between the U.S. and Canada. Those are the American numbers themselves. So it's not even that they have to take Canada's word for it. I don't think, even if he knew those numbers, Alex, that you can convince Donald Trump that tariffs are bad. Like, he knew those numbers months ago. It hasn't changed anything. He loves the concept of these tariffs. So given that, how does the thinking evolve about what Canada's move is?
From Canada, I'd expect a long game of good cop, bad cop. I mean, good cop is plan A. You promise Trump all sorts of great stuff, mutually beneficial stuff. Like if he behaves, though. I mean, if he behaves, he gets border security. Here's a video showing that we're on it. A crackdown on drug gangs, the stuff Canada's already announced. You deliver him these wins on a silver platter, and you let him take credit. And then, if that fails, you make it darned clear there's a plan B, deterrence, the risk of mutually assured economic destruction. I mean, you float every possibility under the sun. Export tariffs, supply interruptions, canceling major contracts with U.S. companies. Oh, that border cooperation we were talking about, that's paused, suspended. To be clear, this would all severely hurt Canada, so you have to hope we never get to that point. But you make clear to Trump that if he follows through with this, you will wake up every single morning of your life thinking of new ways to inflict as much political damage as possible on his party in next year's midterm elections. Like, for example, you know how Doug Ford talked about halting U.S. booze purchases at the LCBO? Well, you make a list about 50 times longer than that, you leak it, and you make sure he sees it. And you hope it scares him off. And if it doesn't scare him off, then we are in for a world of pain. And Canada faces some really difficult choices about how far to go in carrying out this retaliation.
Yeah, no kidding. So February 1st, just really like a few days, hours away at this point. Catherine, as that deadline looms, we've seen the premiers working on this. Alex just spoke about it. Government panels or cross-border conversations. Is any of it working? I mean, you can understand the logic behind it, but what are you hearing from your sources about what is getting through to him?
Yeah, I asked someone just yesterday about what works best. And interestingly, the example this Canadian official pointed me to was one-on-one meetings specifically mentioning Dominic LeBlanc and Howard Lutnick. And what happens today, Lutnick comes around, he basically rhetorically kicks Canada in the shins several times. A couple of Canadian sources have mentioned to me that part of the challenge right now is figuring out who truly has influence with Trump. As people are confirmed and the new administration gets into place, there's a lot of jockeying for position in the United States. A lot of people claiming they have sway. So Canadian officials still working on determining what Trump's bottom line really is. They continue with the plan from the first Trump administration. Engage, engage, engage with businesses, governors, anyone who can help make the case that tariffs are bad. They employed that during the first NAFTA renegotiations. But the thing that is different here, when Canada renegotiated NAFTA, Trump was able to say, great deal, didn't change anything for Canada. Now officials are telling them Trump wants results. Those results could be pretty painful for Canada, Adrienne.
Okay, so he doesn't just want to seem to be winning, he actually wants results. That's got to be a good thing to keep in mind. All right, Catherine Cullen, Alex Panetta, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.